Oh, maybe. No. I'll have. No.
Hello. Welcome to another cruiser inspection in World of Warships. And we are looking at Monmouth, the Monmouth. My goodness. Recently hit the armory for what is it, 26,000 doubloons, along with Incheon. So we're going to be looking at Monmouth today. And then Incheon in defense soon. Defense is out for 400,000 coal. Inchi is on out for the same price as the Monmouth. So, um, should you buy the Monmouth for 26,000 doubloons? No. No, you probably should not. Now with that said, is the Monmouth a good or a bad ship? Now, it's a cruiser, guys. Okay? It's a cruiser. Well, I don't what do you want? I mean, what do you want from a cruiser? So it has all of the modern cruiser features. Feature number one is you absolutely devastate broadside cruisers. Absolutely devastate them. Because you have these pretty fast shells with great AP pen. You shoot 12 of them on a pretty good reload. They have crazy improved ricochet angles. Basically, what these shells are is they're pretty much copy paste on reshells, PVO shells, which are basically copy paste. More accurately, they are PVO shells. So really good shell flight time, very high AP pen, right? Even out to like very very long range. These shells have quite a bit of AP pen. For example, out to like 18 kilometers, you're still well over 250 millimeters of AP pen, right? So any broadside cruiser at basically any range, you will get citadels on it. Obviously, you have cruiser dispersion, 12 fast shells with a pretty solid base reload. Running reload mod of like 13.7 seconds or whatever it is. So cruisers go flat, and this thing absolutely massacres them. DDs, just because of the shell count, even getting all over pens, you can still reliably hit DDs for like 4 to 8k. And then, of course, the gun caliber is 234 millimeters, which means you overmatch the ultralight Smolensk, Jinan, Kolber, these kind of ships, Minotaur. And then, of course, you have crazy healing. So when cruisers HE spam you, you can put out all the fire, or you can heal all the fire damage. You can heal a lot of the damage they deal via HE pen. This Des Moines is like pretty well angled, and we're able to like comfortably citadel him as if he's flat, right? Because we have basically Des Moines pen angles on, what is basically Henri PVO AP, which is pretty cracked. So the guns are cracked. I'd say they're cracked enough that it's not a big deal to not have HE. Obviously, having HE is very important, and it is a downside to not have it. But it's not like the end of the world on Monmouth because the guns are insane. Monmouth is a copy paste Gibraltar with different shells and different consumables, right? Now, the tagline of the thumbnail is, Gibraltar with every issue addressed. And yes, that is what Monmouth is. You have the same hull, you have the same turret layout, the same dogshit firing angles. Now, what are Gibraltar's problems? Gibraltar has quite a few problems. Problem number one with Gibraltar is you have no effectiveness at range. Completely solved. This thing has, 19.5 kilometer base range. Great base range, great shell velocity, super effective at range. Gibraltar's main problem is completely solved. Gibraltar's second problem is the smoke is useless. Okay, doesn't matter. We don't get a smoke. Gibraltar's third problem is it has no improved healing, so when BB slam it, it just gets completely fucked. Okay, well, this basically has the Minotaur heal, in fact. It's not just just a super heal like found on, say, a Salem. This is the Minotaur super heal where you get 50% of Citadel damage repaired, even. So it's like a real, like, upscaled super heal. It's an upscaled Minotaur heal, right? So that problem is totally addressed. Another problem is that anything with DPM or Overmatch can just walk at Gibraltar and just shit into its mouth because it doesn't have torps. Like, even something like a Des Moines can just YOLO push a Gibraltar, and the Gibraltar can't really do anything. So that problem has been totally addressed by you get 4 daring torps per side of your boat. Another problem that Gibraltar has is that while it overmatches ultralights with its 234 millimeter guns, it has ultra fast fuse AP. It has the same like shell parameters for arming and detonating as Minotaur shells, which means that even when you like shoot a minnow through the bow and you hit 12 out of 12 shells, you actually get no citadels. You just get penetration damage. And that is fixed because these are normal shell fuse times, but they keep an improved arming. They have an improved arming threshold. These shells should arm on 39 millimeters of armor, but they actually arm on 25. So even when those ultralights are a bit angled and you aim a bit too high, you still will actually fuse on their upper belts, even though they're only like 16 mil upper belts, right? So so what do you give up to get all of these improvements over Gibraltar? You can't fist DDs that go perfectly flat. That's it. That's the only thing. That's the only thing Gibraltar does that this boat does not do is perfectly flat destroyers. Gibraltar is capable of white barring them if you know how to aim. Now, the awkward part is that when destroyers say angle 45 degrees to Monmouth, it still will also get full pens on them like Gibraltar would, but now with railgun shell velocity, so it's easier to hit the D. So, like, basically, Gibraltar's one thing it does that Monmouth doesn't do is pure gigantic cope. And I would argue that playing without the smoke actually allows you to make use of Gibraltar's biggest asset. But the problem is on Gibraltar, your biggest asset you can never make use of. Why? Because Gibraltar doesn't have effective damage at range. And because you don't have effective damage at range in Gibraltar, you have to play close. Too close to take advantage of the greatest asset that Gibraltar and Monmouth have. It's not the guns. It's not the smoke on Gibraltar. It is the engine. The engine on these clown cars is nuclear fucking powered. This is a parameter that you can't really find anywhere in the game or on ship tool or anything like that, which is how fast does the boat go while turning? There's no real way to know that. You can kind of guess at that by looking at the acceleration, but plenty of ships like say Minotaur that have on paper improved acceleration do not retain the acceleration. This is what I mean. We are locked in a turn going 32.6 knots. Now, I want you to keep in mind, our maximum speed in Monmouth with speed flag is just over 33 knots. So while you are actively maneuvering back and forth, no matter what you're doing, you see here in a switch turn, we go to 31. The switch turn being we're locked to the right, and then we go locked to the left. That's the lowest you ever drop. The most amount of speed you ever lose while turning in Monmouth or Gibraltar is 2 knots of speed. And like no other boat has this feature. No other boat in the game that I'm aware of has this level on the rudder. Even a ship like Indiana, the clown car turning on that boat still loses 4 knots out of 29. This boat loses 2 knots out of 33. Or if you're locked in a turn, it loses half a knot. It only loses that full 2 knots of speed. And I mean, look at the dodging. Like, this is the asset. This is what makes these boats actually special. They have this nuclear powered fucking crankshaft. It's just crazy. And so it allows you to dodge like almost any BB salvo beyond about 13 kilometers. I'd say about 13 kilometers is the range where like basically nothing, even like Slava Bungo, are really going to hit you if you know how to dodge. Now, the armor on Monmouth is like Gibraltar, which is it's good until it's dog shit. Giant 25 bow, so basically every BB in the game overmatches the bow. However, you're unlikely to get citadeled straight through the bow. The real issue is when you're up against a ship that overmatches 30 millimeters of armor, Republic guns and higher caliber, is all of a sudden you're basically Minotaur hull. You're basically a slightly lower in the water Minotaur hull if the ship that's shooting at you can overmatch 30, because you can see here where my cursor is, there is a giant step in the citadel. So we're able to make this turn, which is crazy, right? We're gonna like look at the rocket ship acceleration while locked in a turn, right? And that's what I mean there. He smashes me in the bow, but he can't citadel me straight through the bow. There's too much space between the tip of the bow and the rest of the boat. So I mean, like, look at this maneuverability, right? Like, it's actually insane. So we're gonna sprint out and hard right rudder because we know Wisconsin's got us flat. And at 8 kilometers, like, look at this. We basically dodge his entire salvo and catch it on the side plating that he doesn't overmatch. Now, unfortunately, it completely slipped my mind that Indiana turns almost as well as I do, and I thought for sure I was pulling the heist of the century. But I should know better because I have so many games in Indiana that yeah, he can just turn his entire boat 180 degrees in like 10 seconds. So any other battleship, we would have actually been safe to his guns and maybe made like a game-winning play. We would have been able to rush Wisconsin because Ushakov's dead. But unfortunately, Indiana Clown Car and the rudder of stupidity has caught me lacking, and we go down. But you can see like just the damage this game, right? We nuked the Des Moines. Gibraltar is incapable of that because it doesn't have the railgun shell velocity, right? We hit Torp, so we get the kill on Indiana. Gibraltar's incapable of that, right? And so what I would say about Monmouth is it's kind of one of those cruisers where like it doesn't really have any game impact, right? It doesn't have any utility. It doesn't have like fuck you farm DPM like an Utrecht or a Hindenburg or something like that has, right? People can angle to the AP and you suffer. If you play against Overmatch on 30 millimeters, you completely suffer. But it is fun. I think it's a very enjoyable boat to play. Sometimes depends on the battleships, right? We got kind of blessed here because we were mostly fighting BBs that didn't overmatch our bow. But as soon as you end up in a lobby with like Vermont Bungo, your ability to play the game does really take a nosedive. To be fair, but the boat is it's got a really interesting, like way more dynamic playstyle. If Gibraltar was good, it would be Monmouth. I mean, that's really just all there is to it. If the Gibraltar was good, it would be the Monmouth. Man, that could have been a without Indiana Clown Car getting us turning his whole boat on a dime and nuking me. Man, we've almost got a game on our hands that one, but we lose, and that's what I mean by like it kind of doesn't really have any. It has survivability, like if things are going right. If you can keep the BBs that overmatch you at a long enough range, you can dodge very effectively. Um, and if you can really get used to manipulating the rudder, you can also dodge incredibly effectively as well. And that's why I am going to go out and say, you might have noticed during that first replay, that I'm taking steering gears. Because if you notice, my concealment for both of these replays is 12.7. No, that is not as good as it can get. You can get Monmouth concealment down to 11.5, I believe. However, it is pure bait. Steering gears module in slot 5 is non-negotiable on this boat. It is mandatory. You do not play this ship without the steering gears mod. If you are basing the survivability of this ship, the ability of it to dodge battleship salvos and survive against battleships, if you are basing that on a full concealment spec Monmouth, you are in fact a troll. Because this ship has kind of a shit rudder shift, but kind of a good turning circle, right? And the other thing with Monmouth, what did we just talk about, right? We talked about how it's very effective at range. What else did we say? The threshold for reliably juking almost any BB salvo is what? It's about, in my experience, around that 13-ish kilometer range. Yes, if you get like a pre-turn in, right, like you saw with against the Wisconsin in that last replay, where I'm pre-turning and he didn't realize I was already turning. Yes, you can like kind of preemptively dodge a lot of shit. To be fair, see there we hit like not. I mean, like this is the point, right? Gibraltar's incapable of even hitting these salvos on people because it just doesn't have the shell velocity. But I'm talking about reactionary dodging, right? Like you're pushing in, and the bungo opens up on you, and you have to wait until he shoots to decide how to dodge. You just have to have steering gears on, man. You have to run steering gears. It's not, I'm gonna stress, it is not negotiable. It is not try it out, see how it goes. It is don't play the boat without steering gears, straight up. You're griefing yourself. You're completely griefing yourself to play this boat with full concealment spec. The whole point of Monmouth is to always be shooting at medium range. I want to be within about 13 to 18 kilometers of the enemy battleships. Obviously we can push in and fight cruisers a little better. Push in against isolated BB fights, sure. But we want to be farming battleships in like the 13 to 18 kilometer range where we reliably hit them and we reliably dodge. And part of that reliably dodging requires, I'm going to stress this again, it requires you to run steering gears, because the turning circle on this boat is not bad. It's not amazing, okay? It's not like it's not Indiana. Let's be it's not Indiana, boys, okay? But the rudder shift is real bad. The rudder shift is like 12, 13 seconds on this vehicle. And so the second that you run steering gears, you get your rudder shift down to like we'll look at it in the port obviously, but somewhere around like the 7 to 8 seconds. And then all of a sudden you have like Zhao turning, but you have Zhao turning on a ship that loses 0 speed, right? And it's really hard to hit this thing. Like if you don't overmatch, right? The ass from here back, right? The nose from here forward is 25. But if you do not overmatch 30 millimeters of armor, and a competent Monmouth player who runs steering gears is juking you, you kind of just don't damage it, right? And that's kind of the whole point, is you don't need the smoke, because Gibraltar needs the smoke, because in order for Gibraltar to deal effective damage, it's got to be fighting people inside of about 12 km. Well, at 12 km, or closer, realistically, Gibraltar, like against DDs, you want to be fighting DDs at like the 8 kilometer range, right? You want to be farming BBs and cruisers. I mean, look at this acceleration, right? Like, look at this acceleration. It's fucking crazy, dude. And that's like the major asset of these boats, is just like they don't lose speed. They do not lose speed. Their max speed isn't great. It's again like 33 knots with speed flag. But here you see here, right? The Sabir is shooting me at 17, and I'm gonna turn in and like quote unquote perfectly dodge, and 3 of his shells just basically scrape the edge of the paint on the right side of my hull, which is 30 millimeters of armor, and there goes a third of our HP pool. Cruiser moment. So, it's one of those cruisers that like it's really, really survivable if you're not being shot at by 30 overmatchers, because you can pretty much always, like you saw there, right? We took that entire salvo on the upper belt and the deck. Basically a perfect dodge, if I do say so myself, and yet, because he overmatches 30, those 3 or 4 shells that just scraped the right side of my hull, those all fused, those all armed, those all detonated inside my upper belt, and I lost about a third of my ship. And that's how it goes. Now, if you're fighting, if you make that exact same dodge against a ship that only overmatches 27, like a Montana, right, 406s, then all of a sudden you like start taking 0 damage because they have to hit the bow. Or yes, the superstructure is really big, but it's pretty easy to avoid mainline hits, right? Hits that land on the middle of your deck or the tip of your bow are pretty damn fucking easy to juke, because you just have such insane turning and maneuverability. And that's why, to me, the Monmouth is like fun enough that I overlook the downsides, because the downsides are tough. If you're fighting a bow-in battleship, you just aren't going to do a point of damage, right? Especially a bow-in BB that overmatches you. Like, if you're fighting a Sabir or a Kremlin or a Yamato, and they just go perfectly bow-in, yeah, I mean, you're fucked, right? You're in a fucking cruiser, dude. Like, you're fucked. Absolutely, you're cooked completely. But if you're fighting BBs that don't overmatch you, then you do extremely well. Other battleships that are kind of weird that you really have to watch out for, though, is like a Schlieffen. Schlieffen is bad news bears to this boat. It's really, really bad, because you're gigantic, right? You cannot understate the size of the sheer size of this lad is immense. This boat is gigantic, and it's covered in 27 and 30 and has a really big superstructure. So like, even Schlieffens who don't take even based Schlieffens who don't run IFHE, but it doesn't matter if they run IFHE or non IFHE. They pen the superstructure, which is huge. They pen the bow, which is huge. They run IFHE. They pen your upper belt, which if you're perfectly bow in is a non-factor, obviously, and they don't pen the deck. But you're just so big, and Schlieffen shells are fast. Funny enough, the ship doesn't struggle too hard fighting Libertad, because Libertad, of course, as you know, has the very slow velocity secondary shells. Most of its DPM and fire starting comes from the slow velocity shells, and this is a kind of boat that's like almost custom made to juke libtard shells. Like if you were kiting a libtard at even 11, 12 kilometers and you just constantly wiggle back and forth, you effectively just don't take almost any secondary shell damage from it at all. But Schlieffen, of course, has the very fast shells, and so you get absolutely brutalized. If you were in Schlieffen secondary range, you are completely cooked. Absolutely cooked. Now, this game that we're in, right, is going kind of okay. our map position isn't great, but fortunately for my team, unfortunately for the red team, and unfortunately for everyone who's ever played World of Warships, the game design is such that this is going to be a CV diff game, as you can see. Not only has our carrier been like explicitly collaborating with me to assist over on A flank, but he drops the fighters to perma spot the red CV. We get the red CV killed, and now it is an FDR with free reign, and there's no good anti-airships on the red team. And so we're going to start pushing in here, and we're going to end up with another pretty damn good game. But the sad reality is that this is a CV diff game. If the enemy carrier was as good as my carrier, this would be the nail biter of all nail biters. Because you're going to see how this game ends up playing out. We lose quite a few boats. It comes down to a pretty close situation. But basically, the red team has a 0 point, infinitely repeating 0% chance of winning due to the CV diff. And that's just, it's unfortunate. But, that's the design of this game. But we're going to get shot at by this Colombo at a range of around 15 kilometers, and you're going to see like how crazy this maneuverability is. It's absolutely insane. So we start turning out because we just got shot at by the Colombo. And, I mean, you see the speed here. We're going 32.6 knots, down from like 33.1. And we just drift the entire boat away from his entire salvo. He shot it at about 16, and we traveled another 2 kilometers. It's so hard to hit this ship, man. At a certain range, just literally forget it. Like, literally forget shooting at this boat. Now, if you overmatch it, you can do pretty well against it at, say, inside of about 15 kilometers. Because, like you saw with that severe salvo, you just need a few lucky shells to nuke it. Cruiser moments abound in any cruiser, right? But at that kind of range, like 18 kilometers, it's literally not worth shooting at Monmouth. Now, assuming it runs steering gears, right? If you don't run steering gears, it's pretty worth shooting at because, yeah, the turning's great, the engine is great, you stay fast while you turn, but that initial time to turn, like the first 45 degrees, takes way longer when you don't run steering gears. So, you've got to run it, dude. You've legitimately got to run it. Now, of course, you see there we get a Citadel on Brisbane. Monmouth is, in my opinion, basically the final boss against ultralight cruisers. Brisbane's, Minotaurs, Jinan, Smolensk's, all of these ships. You are the final boss because there are ships with more damage per salvo. Like, say, a Stalingrad, right? A Stalingrad has a bit more. Well, really does it, though? 9 shells with 9k, Yeah, it does. It has a bit more. Your Alpha Strike with these shells, because we're running heavy AP, right? Your Alpha Strike is about 73,000 damage, 74,000 damage. Which isn't like the greatest, right? Stalingrad pumps out more damage, something like a Mecklenburg does, but you have cruiser dispersion, right? And it's not just cruiser dispersion, you have the crazy improved pen angles and the improved arming threshold. Arm on 25 millimeters of armor. And these ultralights like Minotaur that only have a 16 millimeter upper belt, even at like a 30-degree angle, they present 25 plus millimeters of armor to your shells. And so even like if you don't get lucky Citadel hits in Monmouth on a lot of these ultralight cruisers, you just kind of randomly luck into full pens. Whereas a ship like Stalingrad or a ship like Mecklenburg, Marseille, like there's a lot of ships that overmatch them on even, PVO. They require 39 millimeters of arming because, they obey the normal arming rules. And this does not. So it's just diabolical against ultralights. And unlike Gibraltar, like we said at the very start of this video, because you have normal 1/3, is it 1/3 of a second arming time? Or is it 0.033? I can't remember. But because you have 33, yeah, it's 33, right? 33 thousandths of arming. Because you have that fuse detonation time, it allows you to make use of your overmatch on those ships when they are bow or stern in, which a ship like Gibraltar, I can't stress enough, doesn't. If you play Gibraltar, it's very griefing because you'll get a Minotaur that goes perfectly bow into you, and sure, you can get like 12 full pens on him for 20,000 damage, but that's it. Well, Monmouth doesn't get 12 full pens. Monmouth nukes the dog shit out of it with Citadel damage, right? And, see there, we're Citadeling defense that has quite a bit of broadside armor. And what's really comical too is like they didn't even give this thing worse smoke fire penalty than Gibraltar, even though it's theoretically shooting like the same shells with way better velocity. But it just somehow is like respectable smoke fire penalty. It's just better than Gibraltar in every way, basically. Aside from shooting a flat broadside DD that's in your mouth, um, yeah, that's really the only time it's better. It's impossible to torp, right? I mean, back gun, double sit, kill the Brisbane. Even if he perfectly angles, we overmatch him, right? But it's like this is like a poster child of cruiser design in Big 25. You you know think of this, think of Castilla. Um, what do they all have in common? These newer cruisers, um, they either have like smoke, they either have like mediocre gunpowder with smokes, or they have these nuke AP shells that overmatch ultralights, dev strike flat cruisers, and then they typically are just like impossible to torp, right? I mean, this thing, Castilla, they both, you go flat to this or a Castilla in any cruiser, you get dev struck, basically, lose half your boat minimum. I mean, just like look at this maneuverability. We're just like drifting around the clump of his salvo. He gets 2 full pens on the bow for 5k, right? Because he doesn't overmatch the side plating. If they don't overmatch 30, this boat is incredibly, incredibly survivable. Even at very close range with battleships, you actually get to torp them. But the second you fight a ship with 30 overmatch, it's GG Reds. Game over, back to port. Um, so we got, a respectable amount of damage out of this one as well. But, look at how close this game down to, right? We're in a 4v2. It's just a CV diff. Hit a couple torps on Colombo. But you see here what I was talking about earlier with the libtard secondaries, how like every time, now here we're within 8 kilometers, right? But every time I aggressively turn in or out, a lot of those secondaries, even here, even within 8 kilometers, they're not really doing any damage. Schlieffen's the much, much bigger threat to a ship like Monmouth than something like Libtard is, for sure. I don't think there's really any comparison. If you get in the mouth of a Schlieffen in this thing, you're just like instantly giga cooked. And you're kind of survivable a little bit against Libtard as long as you can be like 10 plus kilometers away. But unfortunately, it's a carrier diff game. Red CV mispositioned. We kill him kind of early, like 10 minutes into the game. And now it's FDR against ships with bad anti-air. And like, we can't lose, right? We literally can't lose. This Colombo could, we could have lost every boat on our team with Brisbane, Colombo, and Libtard left on half HP each. And we still would probably win because FDR against ships with bad anti-air, it's over. They have no ability to win in any way. Um, but you need help. You need a little bit of help in this boat. It's not that you need help in your individual fights. It's that you don't have like a way in the Monmouth of like super super instantly impacting the game. You're not like the greatest against DDs, although you're still about average, I would say, even with the AP that doesn't fuse when they go flat. Um, but it's that engine. It's the most fun part of Gibraltar, but unfortunately in Gibraltar you just can't really make use of it hardly ever. And Monmouth ditches the dog shit copium smokescreen that Gibraltar gets, which is completely useless 99% of the time because one DD or one sub creeping within 9-5 griefs you, and then once you're spotted in your smoke, you're just dead. And this ship just teaches you to play Gibraltar the way Gibraltar wants to be played, but can't be played due to the slow shells. And then you get like the crazy Minotaur heal to compensate. You keep the hydro, keep the maneuverability. You keep the damage output, but it's way more effective because of the railguns. You get the torps. And I mean, you can see all of those, all of those assets coming into play. Like, again, this is just another game where, like, in Gibraltar, you don't really do anything, right? We don't hit that early, we don't hit 30k on Hindenburg. We hit none in Gibraltar, basically, right? We're not able to smash Brisbane like we did, right? Um, we're not able to hit the torp on Colombo, right? The game before, we're not able to nuke Des Moines in Gibraltar. We're not able to torp Indiana Clown Car uh, in Gibraltar, right? Um, it's just a tragic state of affairs. Literally all people who enjoy Gibraltar have been asking for is like, just let me have torps and a better heal. That's all anyone who plays Gibraltar has wanted. We've even been okay with like the dog shit shell velocity. You know, people have said maybe give it HE, but like really all Gibraltar ever needed was just what Monmouth got. It like just give it the torps and give it the heal, and all of a sudden like you have a legitimately good ship, or give it a radar, make it an interesting boat to play in some way. But no, instead, they can sell Monmouth. I think they sold it for like what 30,000 dubs when it first came out, and now 26,000. So you know, the Research Bureau Gibraltar is effectively, or is Gibraltar Steel? I can never remember on that one. I think it's Research Bureau, but it's essentially free. You can just get it by playing the game. Monmouth is of course the doubloon option now for 26,000 dubs, and it's just better than Gibraltar in every single way. Aside from like the one time every 2 games Gibraltar white bars a DD. Sure, you can't do that, but then compare that to all the times Monmouth white bars cruisers, especially ultralights. It totally averages out. Plus, the sad reality is, if a destroyer player is so bad at the game that he's been caught and white barred by a Gibraltar, let's be for fucking real, guys. He would have been bad enough to let this thing kill him in 3 salvos anyway. Because letting that happen to you in a DD with how slow Gibraltar shells are is just diabolically misplaying. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop back into the port. Okay, starting with the equipment. This is the build. I'm not gonna say sometimes I say objectively correct, sometimes preference. Obviously you could grab like Hydro Mod, feel free, but you're taking steering gears. Playing without steering gears is just straight up a troll. You're trolling yourself. We look at the maneuverability. We're on a 6-second rudder shift, down from 12.4 because obviously the only thing like worth taking in this slot is steering, and this module gets you from 12.4 to like what 20%, about 10. And so 10-second rudder shift, 840 turning. By getting down to 6, we just turn on a dime basically. And you don't really want to fight people inside of 11.5 anyway. You want, like, if you're pushing in and a Montana is spotted at 14, you're not gonna fucking creep in, and it's not a thing you're ever gonna do. You're gonna open up at a longer range where you can dodge effectively, right? So you play with steering gears 100%. Fuck the 11.5 concealment. Literally griefing yourself to not run steering on this boat. Captain spec, there's not a lot of wiggle room. Now basically there's kind of this build, right? We're going to take Last Stand. We're going to take Survivability. We're going to take Superintendent. We're going to take Concealment Expert. Now, you could like maybe make a tiny case that if you're running Cunningham and counting on always getting that second kill, that you could afford to drop Superintendent. However, I just don't think that you should. Um, because you will use all of the ceiling like every game. I mean, you have to think about it, right? Monmouth with 2 heals covers pen repair only. So the third heal is for fire damage. You take a lot of fire damage. You want another heal. So I do recommend the Superintendent. Although you could make an argument for not needing it. But the question is then, what do you take? So you've got a few options. You got a few 4-point skill options. Now, top grade gunner, again, the problem is, like we said, you're trying to never fight that close anyway. You only fight this close near like the end of the game or in very isolated 1v1s. You could take top grade gunner, but you're not going to get that much value out of it. Now, you could take outnumbered, and then when outnumbered is active, your dispersion becomes diabolically good. The problem is you have a 19.8 kilometer main battery gun range. So how often are you using, we always talk about outnumbered. The sweet spot for outnumbered is like that 15 to 17 kilometer range, right? Where like you're very consistently, if you're just playing a flank that's outnumbered, gonna have it. The problem is with 20 km main gun range, I mean, like, outnumbered is probably not even active on this boat for 80% of every game, only in the end game. And even then, it's only gonna work in the end game, like, because in the end game people are more clumped up, so it's only going to work in the end game if the enemy team outnumbers you. So like, we're going to run outnumbered for the last 3 minutes of the game when the game is unwinnable because we're heavily outnumbered. Like, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. 4-point AA skill, you could maybe make an argument for to get the heal back faster, but it's not really a utility ship. The only thing you're running 4-point AA skill for is just for the heal. I would argue with the super heal, like, is it really that useful to get the super heal back? When the CV humps you, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. To me, like, not a super worthwhile prospect. And of course, running heavy AP shells is half the benefit, almost, 2/3 the benefit really of top grade gunner. So it's like if 2/3 of our salvo, even if top grade gunner's active for a third of our total salvos, it's still only as good as heavy AP, but heavy AP is actually better because salvo weight, right? So, and then there's really no 1-point skills worth taking because you're not a utility ship. So, this is to me just is the first 19 points of the build. Now, I mean, the focus fire training you could argue is complete fucking cope, obviously, because it is. But like, there's nothing really worth taking. And if you guys have been around a while, I hate priority target. I think it's noise, not information. But you could run PT. The 2-point AA skill is not probably doing anything for you. And then you're basically left with 2 points, right? You're gonna have 2 points left over. There's no 2-point skills worth taking. I mean, just straight up. And IFA, especially with this maneuverability, is overall just a superior skill to priority target. If you actually think, like, if you're playing a maneuverable open water cruiser and the point of priority target is to help you avoid damage, like, IFA is literally a more useful skill and it's 1 point. So, you could put both these points on IFA, but because you turn so fast, even though the turret time is only like 28 seconds, I still do really enjoy Grease the Gears. And my last point goes on IFA, but you could put these 2 points on priority target if you want. If you enjoy priority target, go for it. I do really like the better turret traverse of 4 or 5 seconds, whatever it is. I think it's noticeable when you're heavily maneuvering. So, you're free to run. You can run these. You could drop survivability expert if you wanted in one of these if you're convinced on a 4-point skill. Like I said though, like, top grade gunner, just not typically very effective. Outnumbered, not typically very effective. You have too much main gun range. These are skills that are actually quite good on Gibraltar. Funny enough. But I don't think they're very good on Monmouth at all. And then the hull, if you're not familiar with the Gibraltar hull, is this. Actually, this is technically a worse hull than Gibraltar. I forgot this because if we look at Gibraltar, where is it? Gibraltar is a 40 millimeter deck. So I think I said that this had the 40 deck, but that is not correct. If I said it has the 40 millimeter deck, leave an angry comment and then edit it when you realize I corrected myself. But yeah, so as you can see, if you are pushing bow in and you are only being shot at by a BB that overmatches 25 but not 30, it's very, very easy with this maneuverability to show like 45 degrees. And even at like 7-8 kilometers, you get shot at, you turn in this much, and you take it all on the belt. However, let's say the BB shooting at you overmatches 30. Well, that's all of your nose, all of your deck, all of your side plating, including the step in your citadel. Now compare this boat to a Minotaur. Okay, that's a Minotaur. Overmatched by 457s. Overmatched by 457s. Overmatched by 457s. Step Citadel. Monmouth. Overmatched by those same 457s. More likely to arm. Overmatched by those 457s. More likely to arm. Overmatched by those 457s. More likely to armed. Stepped Citadel that is as big of a step, except the overall Citadel on Monmouth is a bit lower. So it's not really even an exaggeration, dude. When Monmouth is shot at by BBs that overmatch 30, it is a fucking Minotaur hull. But no, it's not a Minotaur hull, actually, because look at the size difference. The size difference of these two ships. So you're in a Minotaur hull, but you're twice as big. That's what happens when a Bungo shoots at you, when a Vermont shoots at you. You're in a Minotaur that's twice as easy to hit. Just another reason you don't want to take the concealment. You want to fight those ships at longer range or you're cooked, right? So, It embodies, as we started the video off, it embodies cruiser game design to a nutshell. Made out of paper to BBs with overmatch. Impossible to torp. How would you ever torp this thing in Shimakaze with its fucking plutonium rudder? If we look at the maneuver, 33.6 knots. So when you're locked in a turn, you lose 1 knot. When you wiggle back and forth between turns, you lose 2 knots. So like, and it has a hydro. It's like, how do you ever torp this thing? You don't. So immune to torpedo boats. This ultralight cruisers at any angle. Smashes broadside cruisers. Food for battleships. So your average large cruiser design in Big 25, of course. You hate to see it, but you know, it's just this is the developer we have. So yeah, that'll do it for the Monmouth inspection. As always, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.